to welcome my colleague Fergal Nolan, who is my partner in crime. He's the chair of the Planet in Focus Foundation Board, to make an award.
Good evening, everyone, and we're delighted to have you here, and this is a great occasion. This is the Planet in Focus. It's not just a festival because it goes beyond the year to educational, supporting small festivals right across the country. You have heard of the Industrial Eco Award and the rather intimidating or worrisome story that Andre has just told us. We have another award at Planet in Focus, and that's called the Community Eco Hero Award. And this year, Planet in Focus is awarding that to Percy Schmeiser. Now, many of you will have heard of Percy Schmeiser. Percy Schmeiser is a farmer from Saskatchewan, which is one of my favorite provinces. I know it quite well. And he comes from Bruno, and I know people in Bruno. He was once, for a long time, the mayor of Bruno, Saskatchewan, which everybody in Toronto has heard of, Bruno, Saskatchewan, a thriving metropolis. And that is near Marysburg, Saskatchewan, right? It's also near Lake Lenore and Munster and what's the big town? Now it's just escaped my name. Humboldt. And Percy Schmeiser probably knows the Schultes, right? And Louise and Sister Aquinas, who died recently, and Al Gerwing in Lake Lenore. This is an extraordinary place. It's not region of Saskatchewan. Its heritage is German, from settlers who came from the United States. Its spiritual center is the great Benedictine Abbey at Munster, Saskatchewan, a daughter abbey of Collegeville, Minnesota, where the Dalai Lama visits, and they go back and forth with the Dalai Lama. And so this is a wonderful place, and I recommend everybody go there. And the one thing you get in Saskatchewan, it's no surprise to me that we would have an eco-hero coming from Saskatchewan. Next door, Al Gerwing is a member of the Order of Canada for what he's done. If you think Bruno is small, you should see Lake Lenore, right? And here's Percy Schmeiser. Well, he fought a battle for a principle. And the principle, he's a farmer. And since people started farming in Iraq, in the great valley of the two great rivers, in Mesopotamia, farmers have always taken a portion of their seed and saved it to plant next year, and this is their entitlement. Well, somebody disputed that, a corporation disputed that, and I'm not disparaging the corporation, there's a principle at stake. And in their view, they made a new kind of seed that you didn't need to use pesticides on, but they want control over the seed. And this is the Monsanto Corporation. Well, some of that seed flew into Percy's sweet crop and onto his land and grew there. And Percy felt that he was quite entitled to use whatever seed grew on his land for the next crop and the next crop, and so Monsanto disagreed. And they said, no, that's our seed, our patent. Now living organisms are being patented, as you know, and here was the question of principle. So it's a fundamental question. We don't have to disparage either side or people involved. There are serious issues at stake. Percy took it all the way to the Supreme Court. It was a big issue. It became famous all around the world because a lot is at stake. Now, the court, and Percy will probably tell you a little more. I think you know the story a lot better than I do, Percy. So the court did not quite find for Percy. It found for Monsanto and said, well, they did have a patent. But they didn't give Monsanto all the money or all the sanctions they claimed, and they left a lot of leeway for future interpretation. So in other words, people really do think that Percy Schmeiser had at least a moral victory at the Supreme Court of Canada. And for his moral courage, his courage of heart in taking it all that way, we, Planet in Focus, regards Percy Schmeiser as this year's Community Echo Hero.
It's a great honor for me to, and privilege to receive this award. But really the award should go to my wife, who was always behind me and gave me that encouragement. Don't give up your rights. Fight for the rights of farmers, gardeners, and tree planters around the world, that they never lose the right to their seed. Because if you ever lose your right to use your own seed, you'll become serfs of the land and back to a feudal system. I will just touch briefly on the whole issue. As was mentioned, I was charged for patent infringement, so I came under the Federal Court of Canada. Patent infringement because I was growing Monsanto's GMO canola without a license from them, and as was said, I'd never bought their seed and never went to one of their meetings. I didn't even know anybody from Monsanto. So it eventually ended up in the Supreme Court of Canada. But in the Supreme Court of Canada, we could bring up other issues besides patent infringement. And that was the issue of who owns life. Has anyone the right to own life or a gene that controls life? So that we were also able to bring into the Supreme Court. And this is what the Supreme Court really ruled. They said Monsanto's patent on a gene is valid. And wherever that gene arrives into any higher life form, Monsanto owns that life form. So now there's real questions before the people of Canada and the Parliament of Canada, because where do you stop? A plant, a seed, bird, bee, animal, fish, or even a human being, because of the interpretation from the Supreme Court. As was mentioned, I didn't have to pay Monsanto 1 red cent, no license fees, punitive damage, or anything. But what was not fair, the court ruled I have to pay, my wife and I have to pay our legal bills, Monsanto pays their legal bills. Now, it's a lot easier for a corporation to pay their $2 million court cost than a farmer to stand up for his rights. Our court cost was in excess of $400,000 to stand up for what we believed in. And that was not fair, because Monsanto laid the lawsuit against us because they made it, as they said in court, it was a test case to see how far they could control through patent law farmers' rights or control the total seed and fruit supply. But it didn't end there. Last May, and a lot of people don't know this, the case went before the United Nations Human Rights Commission in Geneva. And I presented the case there, and Canada now is charged for drastic violations of human rights here in Canada, because in Canada, we do not have labeling, and we don't know what we're feeding our children or our grandchildren, and we should have the right to know what we are eating. So it's basically a drastic violation of rights. There was other issues we brought in, why it's a violation of human rights in Canada. So that's basically where the case stands now. As of this week, Monsanto has been issued another challenge by my wife and myself, because they again contaminated some of our land last year, and they refused, even though they acknowledged they contaminated, they refused to pay for the cleanup unless I signed a non-disclosure statement that for the rest of my life, and my wife and one of my sons could never ever talk what the settlement was. And we said we would never ever give up our freedom of speech to a corporation. I won't take too much of your time, but I think that with the introduction of GMOs, genetic modified organisms, is the greatest assault and danger to the environment that we've ever seen before on the face of this planet. Because basically it will destroy our freedom of choice, biodiversity, and so on. So It's a very important issue, not only for the environment, but for our people, in regards to our food that we eat, our health and our safety of our food. There's many other issues, but I think a very important issue and a battle that I am fighting and speaking about around the world is the Terminator gene. The Terminator gene is a very, very important issue, and the Department of Environment of Canada is promoting the Terminator gene in foreign countries, yet here in this country, they are saying they have taken a neutral stand on the Terminator gene. Terminator gene, quickly, is that a gene is put into a plant produces a seed. If the seed from that plant is sterile, it will not reproduce life, or it will not germinate. The danger of the Terminator gene is it can be put into any higher life form. So to me, it's the greatest assault on life on this planet as I've ever known before. So can you imagine a corporation coming out with a program, a policy, a new product that terminates life? And as again, it can be put into any higher life form, including a human being. And all of us should become aware of that Terminator gene. So that's another great danger. Why have my wife and I taken such a stand against the control of life, the control of seeds, and so on? I'm going to be 76 in a couple of months. My wife is 75. And we have 5 children and 15 grandchildren and 1 great-grandchild on the way. And if we don't take a stand now, what will happen for the future? Or what kind of a legacy are we going to leave to our children? I've come through 60 years of using chemicals. I've seen what it's done to the environment, and what it has done to our air, our water, our soil. And with the introduction of GMOs, there's a massive, massive increased use of chemicals. Lower yields, and also the rates, or not the rates, but the yields have gone down. There has been no benefit, but only a benefit to the corporations like Monsanto, increase highly and more toxic chemicals because of new super weeds that have been developed. So again, we don't want to leave. My wife and I don't want to leave a legacy to our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren now of land and air and food and soil full of poisons. We want to leave a legacy of air and land and soil and water without poisons. And that's why I continued, as long as I have life in me, to go around the world and give this message, how you can be controlled and destroy not only the environment, but the food that we eat and our health. Again, it's a great pleasure for me to receive this award. And again, there's more than just the environmental issue. It's a whole moral and ethical issue that goes with the control over people through GMOs and patent law. Thank you.
Now, we cannot let this award end. Percy has mentioned his wife. And I think you've seen what a strong influence she was and what a support she was. So I would ask everybody here to give a unanimous vote of congratulations to Percy Schmeiser, Mrs. Schmeiser, by your applause. Percy will take that back to Bruno.
To add that even though we've had a lot of stress there's another lawsuit Monsanto had laid against us for $1 million, but the Supreme Court also threw that out. So it put a lot of stress on my wife, especially she had developed high blood pressure, breast cancer, she had to have her breast removed, so she really went through a really terrible time and stress, and yet she stood up and told me many times, don't give up, fight it to the end. Thank you.